Hi, and welcome to Lessons with Cameron. In this video, we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the chords that we would use to play in a key. We're going to use the key of G today for purposes of this demonstration. Then later on in the video, we're going to go ahead and move those chords around to allow you access to some of the other keys, some of the other major keys, at least in this case. The most popular key for the guitar in ballads and most songs that are in major tends to be G. So you're going to come across it a lot in a number of songs. Countless songs actually are in G. So let's talk about the chords themselves. I want to define what we call a scale and a chord and a key, just in case we don't know what a chord is at all. The way I'd start this is this. A scale is a series of notes. A chord is taking every other note from a scale, like 1, 3, 5, or the second, fourth, and sixth, and so on, throughout the scale to create three-note chords called triads. And the typical major scale is going to be made up of 7 triads, based on the 7 notes of the scale. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore those chords, and for more information about that, go to my blog. I'm going to just show you the chords themselves and run you through these progressions to keep you moving. So the first chord I want to do is we're going to look at we're going to go over the chords real quick in their entirety and then break them down one at a time. The first chord we're going to do is a G chord, which is the first chord a lot of people learn on the guitar. So I'm going to show you a simple fingering for this. A lot of players recommend and books recommend your ring finger here. I prefer to use my pinky. This frees my ring finger up for ornamentation and other stuff later. So on the 3rd fret of the 1st string, we're going to put our pinky. We're going to put our index finger on the 2nd fret of the 5th string and our middle finger on the 3rd fret of the 6th string. And it should look kind of like this, with your the knuckles, the line of your fingers should be kind of pointing at your face at this point. So if you're trying to do it from directly underneath, you're going to find that your fingers run out of room. And it's really hard to do that. You want to kind of swing your wrist and your elbow out just a little bit to get a nice clean angle, because it's almost done from a straight hand. I just have to curl my fingertips. This is key for getting this chord easily. G can otherwise be very difficult. So here's our G chord. This particular chord is the 1 chord. We call that the tonic. It's the center, the tonal center of this whole key. You're going to probably start and end with the G chord if you're playing in G. So the first thing I'm going to do is move you on to the rest of the chords of the key. Now the second note of the G scale would be the note A, a whole step up from the G chord, or the G note. The A, being the 2nd chord, would be a minor chord. So we're going to put our 1st finger on the 2nd string at the 1st fret. We're going to put our 3rd finger on the 3rd string on the 2nd fret, and the middle finger is going to go right above the ring finger on the 4th string 2nd fret. This is a 5-string chord, so we're going to strum all 5 strings except for the thickest low E string. This would be A minor. Now the next chord is B minor. B is the 3rd note in the G scale, and B minor is kind of tricky. We're going to have to do a bar chord to keep this simple, because there's just no real easy way of doing this. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to lay our 1st finger across the at least 5 strings on the 2nd fret. We're going to take our middle finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. The pinky goes on the 4th fret of the 3rd string, and the ring finger will go on the 4th fret, 4th string. This is B minor. You'll strum 5 strings only, leaving the thickest E string out again. B minor, which of course might sound familiar because it's the 1st chord to the Eagles' Hotel California. Okay, so moving on, the next chord is the 4 chord, and it's a C major. G, A, B, C. Now if you ever saw Sound of Music, that's Do, Re, Mi, Fa. The C chord is a major chord, so we're going to take our 1st finger, we're going to place it on the 2nd string, 1st fret. We're going to take our middle finger to the 4th string, place it on the 2nd fret. We're going to then place our ring finger on the 5th string, 3rd fret. This is again a 5-string chord. Go ahead and strum all 5, leaving out the low E. There is our C chord. The next chord in the sequence, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, So, would be a D. D is done quite simply by placing your middle finger on the 2nd fret of the 1st string, your ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and your pointer finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. This creates the chord D. Now D, because we have an open D string at the 4th string here, we're only going to strum 4 strings. This is our D chord. The next chord in this sequence is going to be G, A, B, C, D, E. So we're going to go to the E chord. Now the 6 is a minor chord, so the E minor is just your second finger on the second fret of the 5th string and your third finger on the second fret of the 4th string. This is a 6-string chord. You can strum all 6 for E minor since the bottom string is an E. The last chord in the sequence is the trickiest chord because it's an F sharp diminished, or an F sharp half diminished, depending on whether you're using 3 or 4 notes in your chord. This is the sound of a diminished chord. It's not very commonly used, but it is there, and it definitely has a function. Another voicing for that chord, or another way to play it, would sound like this. After that, we're going to return to G major. So all the chords in sequence would be G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, F sharp half diminished, 4 strings, the E, A, D, and G only, and then back to G major. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the most common chord progressions in music and make sure that we get down the ones that are going to come up the most often. Now, chord progressions can be reused over and over and over again in song after song after song after song. The melodies, of course, have to be very different, but the chords themselves, you're going to find the same chord progression used over and over again. So these 4 chord progressions I'm going to give you are some of the most common chord progressions you can expect to see. So the first one I want to talk about is 1, 4, and 5, meaning the first, 4th, and 5th chords in the key. Now if you remember when we went through the chords, G was 1, A minor was 2, B minor was 3, C major was 4, D was 5, E minor was 6, and F sharp half diminished was 7. Back to 1 is G. So we're going to play the 1, the 4, and the 5 chords. So here's a 1, 4, 5 progression. And this is kind of what you can expect these chords to sound like. You're going to hear 1, 4, and 5 in nearly every single song. Sometimes there'll be additional chords added, but you can expect to always hear these guys. That's what we'd call 1, 4, 5, 4, because I went back to the C. Or we could do 1, 4, 5, 1, returning back to the G, and that'll give it a finished sound. There's that 1, 4, 5. We call those the primary chords. In every key that you play, you have to know your 1, 4, 5s. In this case, we're playing in G, and so our 1, 4, 5s are G major, C major, D major. That's G major, C major, D major. The next chord progression I'm going to look into is going to be one of the most common chord progressions in modern rock, and there have been people who have created large medleys of songs that use this exact same progression. So you may recognize the sound of this, even though I'll try to make it not something in particular. 1, 5, 6, 4, that would be G. Our next chord will then be the 5 or D. Then we go to the 6 chord, which is E minor, then to the 4 chord, which is C. This is the song that you could expect just a small town girl to really kind of get into. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So part of that might have sounded a little familiar. So the next progression I want to look at is a progression called the 2-5-1. The 2-5-1 might be the most useful progression you'll ever learn in music. The problem is finding it because it's always there, it's just cleverly disguised. So understanding the sound of a 2-5-1 and the makeup of a 2-5-1 really does do you a lot of justice in terms of trying to figure out the sound of the chords you're actually hearing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and play the 2, which would be in this case an A minor, to the 5, which would be our D, to the 1, which is our G. Now, it may or may not sound super familiar like that, but trust me, once you start doing chord analysis and really looking at what kind of chords are getting used in a lot of songs, you're going to find that one pops up all the time. The last one I want to talk about is another extremely common progression. It's a 1, 6, 4, 5, and that basically is going to sound a lot like the stuff you would have heard from the 50s, kind of those plunkety-plunkety ballads. I'll play you a little bit here of that kind of style using a 1, 6, 4, 5. So that's G major, E minor, C major, D major. Now I'm going to go ahead and strum it out so you can hear how it would sound in a more modern context. So what we didn't talk about, and I'd like to address now, is the use of bar chords so that we can move these chords around to allow us access to other keys besides G, because sooner or later you're bound to play in something else besides G. We're going to look at a bar chord. Now, the first bar chord we're going to look at is a major. So you're going to lay your first finger across the 3rd fret, covering all 6 strings. We're going to stick our second finger on the 3rd string, 4th fret. The pinky will go on the 5th fret of the 4th string, and then the ring finger will go on the 5th fret of the 5th string, and this bar chord would give us the chord G. Now if we slid this up the neck, it becomes a new major chord. In this case I went up 2 frets, so I went from G to A, this being A major. So we've got our major chord here, which if I had to tab this out, my fret numbers here from thickest to thinnest are 3, 5, 5, 4, 3, 3. I'm going to slide this chord 2 frets up to A, but I'm going to remove my middle finger. So I've got 5, 7, 7, 5, 5, 5. This is A minor. I use my middle finger to help support my index finger because it gets tiring holding this thing down. There's my A minor. The next chord is B minor. I'm going to slide up 2 more frets to the 7th fret. Here at the 7th fret, I'm going to do 7, 9, 9, 7, 7, 7. The exact same shape I did for A minor, but now because my index here is planted on B, this is a B minor. I'm going to slide up 1 fret, so now I'm on 8. And I'm going to keep the same shape. These 2 guys are going to stay there pretty much the whole time. I'm going to reintroduce my middle finger into the 9th fret of the 3rd string, turning this back to major. Keeping with the major minor thing, I'm going to slide up 2 frets and without changing anything. This is D. We're going to go 2 more frets without changing anything, and this is E minor again. I've got one last chord here, and that's F sharp half diminished. This one's a little tricky because we're going to go 14, 15, 14, 14. That's the least common chord, so if it's a tough one, don't worry about it, you won't need it so much. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take all those same chord shapes, G, A minor, B minor, C, D, E, E minor, E half diminished, G. We're going to put them up 2 frets to give us A major, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major, F sharp minor, G sharp half diminished, and A again. That one's a bit of a squeeze way up here. So, by moving these back and forth, this is how we're going to access other keys. There's a whole other set of bar chords. We'll go into those on another day. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the strum options that we have on hand. Now, strumming can be done one of 2 ways. Since there's only 2 directions to go, we can go down across the strings. We call this a down strum. Or we can do an up strum going the other way. Now, usually if you go fast enough across the strings, you don't hear the discrepancy of low to high and high to low. With one quick strum across the strings, they all seem to sound at basically the same time. What we're going to do is we're going to start with straight quarter notes, which is 1 strum per beat using a downstroke with the right hand. We're going to use a G here. It's going to be the 4th finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. We're going to take our pointer and we're going to put it on the 2nd fret of the 5th string, and we're going to take our middle and put it on the 3rd fret of the low E. And this is, we're going to start with the quarters. So this is what it would be. Down, 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 down. I want you to repeat that exercise until it's pretty comfortable. A good place to set your metronome is somewhere between 60 and 80 beats per minute, which is a good comfortable setting. Next thing we want to do is talk about eighths. Eighth notes are half the length of quarter notes and are represented by down and up. So we want to move our hand the same way we move our foot. With eighth notes, typically we are thinking 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. We want to move our hand the same way with down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Here's the same G chord using eighth note strums. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The next thing we can do is start to mix our downs 1, 2, 3, 4 with our down ups 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So we're going to do a quarter note or a down, then we're going to do 2 eighth notes, down up, then another quarter note, down, then 2 eighth notes, down up. So we get 1, 2 and 3, 4 and down, down, up, down, down, up. Let's give it a try. We're going to go from G with this new rhythm for 2 measures. We're going to do a measure of C, then we're going to go back to G. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and C, 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and. That pattern is best to be practiced over and over again till you can pretty much do it with your eyes closed. You want to try to avoid looking down at the neck if at all possible, and really concentrate on the rhythm. Again, set your metronome to between about 60 and 80. That's a good comfortable spot, and you can start turning it up as you get more comfortable and more accurate. Using the strum pattern that we talked about earlier in this video, down, down, up, down, down, up, we're going to go over the 4 chord progressions we also talked about. So here it is with the first one, the 1, 4, 5, 1, or G, C, D, G. 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 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 1, 2 and 3, 4 and. The next progression would be the 1, 5, 6, 4 progression, and would go like this. 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 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 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to take a look at the 2, 5, 1 using that same exact pattern. This time I'm going to use some of the bar chords that we discussed near the end of the chord section. So 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 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 1. The last chord progression is the 1, 6, 4, 5, kind of in that cool 50s feel. So 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 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 1, 2, 3, 4. The key to remember here is that no matter what kind of guitar player you want to be, you must essentially first be a very solid rhythm guitarist. You learn so much by playing rhythm, and your job is way more important than a lead guitarist. This is something you want to keep in mind, that doing leads is great, but that's only 2% of the song. The other 98% of the song, you're going to have to be playing rhythm. So work on your rhythms, work on your down-ups, play with that metronome so that you know that you're solid. You want to be able to count on your drummer just as much as you want your drummer to count on you. Plus, dancers don't like it when you fiddle around with the time too much. They kind of lose their groove. So just keep your timing tight, and keep it moving, keep the people moving, and the rest of it's all downhill from there. So thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. This has been Lessons with Cameron. Check out my blogs, subscribe, pass it around to your friends, and check back for more updates, more theory, more technique, more guitar reviews, more amp reviews, and all kinds of good, juicy stuff. So thanks for tuning in. See you next time.